Socialism is a satanic system, despite what your TV and your school is teaching you. What's your opinion of the world today? And what does this Bible have to say? Welcome to the show. Now, before I start the show, I just want to point out a few things. This show is a show that talks about fringe topics with a Christian point of view. So if that offends you, please turn it off now, and you don't have to be offended. All right. It's been a little while since I actually did a show. I just wanted to let everyone know I've been working. I'm really staying up late, and I'm still going to be tired tomorrow because I am working tomorrow too. But I've decided I want to do this show because this one is kind of something I've wanted to talk about for a while. It's not something I'm going to be so much talking on. I'm putting some information on this episode that I feel is going to be taken off of YouTube. YouTube is taking down a lot of truth about things of history and actual things that matter that people need to know about. And I've noticed that. So I wanted to archive this stuff. I'm sure it'll be taken down from my channel eventually too, but I'm actually stored this stuff on my computer so that when the liberal-owned media system that is YouTube finally goes completely socialist, then, yeah, they can tell everybody all the evil things about how, those people, those Christians or those people who actually know history are bad, and to just get knowledge from them. Well, whatever. At least then we'll have some backed up information. So I basically took a bunch of YouTube little segments that I felt were important. They're political. It's basically stuff all talking bad about socialism and the Liberal Party. But I'm not agreeing completely that the Republican Party is always perfect either. By putting these things together on this show, I'm just stating them out there for people to listen to so they have this information before it goes away, because censorship is really happening and things are being taken down, and people are not being taught their history about terrible things that once happened. So anyway, I'm not going to get into all the detail. My point is don't take this as a terrible episode because Leo's getting all, stating he's a Republican. I'm not really a Republican or a Democrat. I stand for freedom, liberty, and a constitution. I agree with those statements. And higher than all of them, I put the commandments of God. So that's where I sit. These are just some good points that these people make, and they're very educated points, and they teach a lot of good information in a quick way for people who just can't, read a book about this stuff. This stuff will really help you understand what really happened in history. So without further ado, I'm going to play the first one, talking about the Democratic Party and racism, and who is really the racist one in history.
When you think about racial equality and civil rights, which political party comes to mind? The Republicans or the Democrats? Most people would probably say the Democrats, but this answer is incorrect. Since its founding in 1829, the Democratic Party has fought against every major civil rights initiative and has a long history of discrimination. The Democratic Party defended slavery, started the Civil War, opposed Reconstruction, founded the Ku Klux Klan, imposed segregation, perpetrated lynchings, and fought against the Civil Rights Acts of the 1950s and 1960s. In contrast, the Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an anti-slavery party. Its mission was to stop the spread of slavery into the new Western territories with the aim of abolishing it entirely. This effort, however, was dealt a major blow by the Supreme Court in the 1857 case Dred Scott versus Sandford, The court ruled that slaves aren't citizens, they're property. The 7 justices who voted in favor of slavery, all Democrats. The 2 justices who dissented, both Republicans. The slavery question was, of course, ultimately resolved by a bloody civil war. The commander-in-chief during that war was the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, the man who freed the slaves. 6 days after the Confederate Army surrendered, John Wilkes Booth, a Democrat, assassinated President Lincoln. Lincoln's vice president, a Democrat named Andrew Johnson, assumed the presidency. But Johnson adamantly opposed Lincoln's plan to integrate the newly freed slaves into the South's economic and social order. Johnson and the Democratic Party were unified in their opposition to the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment, which gave blacks citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which gave blacks the vote. All 3 passed only because of universal Republican support. During the era of Reconstruction, federal troops stationed in the South helped secure rights for the newly freed slaves. Hundreds of black men were elected to Southern state legislatures as Republicans, and 22 black Republicans served in the U.S. Congress by 1900. The Democrats did not elect a black man to Congress until 1935. But after Reconstruction ended, when the federal troops went home, Democrats roared back into power in the South. They quickly reestablished white supremacy across the region with measures like black codes, laws that restricted the ability of blacks to own property and run businesses, and they imposed poll taxes and literacy tests used to subvert black citizens' right to vote. And how was all of this enforced? By terror, much of it instigated by the Ku Klux Klan, founded by a Democrat, Nathan Bedford Forrest. As historian Eric Foner, himself a Democrat, notes, in effect, the Klan was a military force serving the interests of the Democratic Party. President Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, shared many views with the Klan. He resegregated many federal agencies and even screened the first movie ever played at the White House, the racist film The Birth of a Nation, originally entitled The Klansman. A few decades later, the only serious congressional opposition to the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 came from Democrats. 80% of Republicans in Congress supported the bill, less than 70% of Democrats did. Democratic senators filibustered the bill for 75 days until Republicans mustered the few extra votes needed to break the logjam. And when all of their efforts to enslave blacks, keep them enslaved, and then keep them from voting had failed, the Democrats came up with a new strategy. If black people are going to vote, they might as well vote for Democrats, as President Lyndon Johnson was purported to have said about the Civil Rights Act. I'll have them voting Democrat for 200 years. So now, the Democratic Party prospers on the votes of the very people it has spent much of its history oppressing. Democrats falsely claim that the Republican Party is the villain, when in reality, it's the failed policies of the Democratic Party that have kept blacks down. Massive government welfare has decimated the black family. Opposition to school choice has kept them trapped in failing schools. Politically correct policing has left black neighborhoods defenseless against violent crime. So when you think about racial equality and civil rights, which political party should come to mind? I'm Carol Swain, professor of political science and law at Vanderbilt University for Prager University.
Okay, I'm not endorsing Prager University either, just in case anyone gets the bright idea thinking that, oh, Leo's endorsing this. It's just they have some really good informational videos, so that's what I used. I'm not endorsing them. It's just something that I thought was interesting, and the facts seem to be accurate. The Democratic Party, despite what you hear on TV, you know, that place where you hear only Trump hate all day long, And I'm not standing up for Trump. I'm just saying that it's a little irritating when every time I turn on a TV, all I hear is hate Trump, hate Trump, hate Trump, hate Trump. Like a brainwashing is happening. Or propaganda is being shoved down my throat. That's just a little something I figured that was important to know the history of the Liberal Party. I'm not saying that Republicans didn't have slaves, but at some point, Black Lives Matter should look into the fact that why is slavery not legal anymore? Maybe somebody actually made it illegal at some point in history. Therefore, somebody wasn't being racist. Somebody stood up. And also, if you're going to go after slavery, you might want to look into human trafficking that's happening right now. And that takes all races, all sexes, and they're all being slaved. So there's a great deal of slavery still happening to this day. So that's something that irritates me every time I hear Black Lives Matter. No, all lives matter, and there's still slavery today. And we're fighting about racism when we should be uniting against human trafficking and slavery of all races today. So this is the next little thing talking about socialism, because the Liberal Party seems to like socialism. And this is where I really get really irritated, because socialism is not good. It's very, very, very bad for everybody, except for this small percentage at the top that takes all of your money away from you. Whatever. It's just something that I can't stand. And yes, I don't believe that, we're supposed to take control of the government as Christians and rule over the world like this seven mountain mandate crap. But I do get irritated because it's not exactly a freedom type of thing if people are taking your stuff that you have worked for, your property and everything, and giving it to everybody else. Why can't I be the judge of whether or not I give to the poor and take care of the poor myself? Why do I have to have a government to tell me to do that? So anyway, this is the next little segment.
Democratic socialism. It's not the same as socialism because it's democratic, right? Or something, right? People are buying that. People buy that now, right? Apparently. As though adding the word democratic in front of a word changes what it means. Just because we toss something to a vote doesn't change what that something is. Nor does it alter whether that something is inherently good or bad. Couple of examples, because I know you'll ask. Hamas was democratically elected as the government in Gaza, despite the fact that the destruction of not only Israel, but the eradication of all Jews is in their official charter. Robert Mugabe, or Bobby Mugabe if you prefer, was democratically elected by a loving majority in Zimbabwe. How's that working out? Venezuela? Well, Hugo Chavez, noted personal favorite and friend of Sean Penn, to whom he constantly pointed as being unfairly characterized as a dictator when in fact he was democratically elected as a socialist. Well, how'd that work out for Venezuela? Well, it's now on the brink of collapse, despite it being one of the most resource-rich nations in the entire world. Basic things like eggs, milk, flour, and toilet paper are either too expensive for the average Venezuelan or simply out of stock. Out of stock, mind you, democratically. I know. Some of you will say, well, that's not fair because really we knew all along it technically was a dictatorship. Okay, that's fair. Let's move on to example number 2. Denmark? Okay, here's the time where you point to an entirely homogeneous population, about 1/60th the size of America's, and you point to that as the blueprint. Okay, let's go there. This is a place where the middle class can't even afford a car because of the 180% new car tax. And the Prime Minister was so fed up with Americans pointing to it as a beacon for socialist success that he felt compelled to clarify, I would like to make one thing clear. Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy. Sweden? I love Sweden. Okay, great bikini team, and thanks to that country, my armoire now doubles as a bookcase. Speaking of which, the founder of IKEA, let's be honest, the only really cool export from Sweden, aside from a few good hockey players, left Sweden because of the stifling high tax rate. So, Sweden, good place, not bad people, but a successful model for a viable economy in today's global market? Incorrect. The fact is that over time, The greatest enemy of socialism is reality. The reality that human nature will invariably pull certain people toward individualism and success and others toward laziness and collectivism. The tension between the makers and the takers always leads to socialism's inevitable collapse. But I know that I can give you examples of failed socialist economies until I'm blue in the face, and you won't care. Because at least socialism is inherently more morally altruistic than the evil, greedy, capitalist warmongering seen in the West. Greed? What's more greedy than wanting to take from someone else something that you haven't earned? Unlike capitalism, free enterprise, which can only occur truly through voluntary transaction, socialism can only occur at gunpoint. That's what it comes down to. If you don't pay your taxes, once you get through the IRS and the auditing and the lawyers and the PR stunts, people make you give the government your money, an increasing amount of your money, the more successful you are, or they send in scary men with guns to take you away. Now, so long as the people having their stuff taken away at gunpoint are in the minority, and the majority feels that they'll get to benefit from more said taken stuff, you'll always be able to win that decision through a popular vote and claim the moral high ground through democracy. Putting the word democratic in front of your socialism doesn't make it any inherently more moral nor less violent. Did you get that? American wannabe socialists also. Get a job. Please, like a real job. You'll probably have to shave first. I'm Steven Crowder for Prager University.
Yes, I know. Leo just played another Prager University little segment. I really am not trying to promote them. I'm just saying that they have some great things that really give a lot of good information online. They really seem to have pretty much something for everything, okay? And I'm not saying that I agree with all their politics or all their everything, but I agree with some of the aspects of these videos or these audio clips from the videos that are on here. And socialism is not good, is it? So these guys are technically right when they say all of these things about the things that it's doing. And, I mean, look what it's doing to Venezuela, just like that just did talk about. I mean, it's not good, right? I mean, I'll put it this way. The God I worship is not all about taking your stuff and trying to, take away everything that you have because he's a big, mean God. No. But man has always, God is for you having private property, personal things, and not having it stolen. A thief shall not enter into heaven, right? So socialism, being a thief, is not a good thing. It's taking your stuff. And that's not a heavenly thing. So, whatever. Anyway, my point is, these are good, informative things. And schools are not teaching this stuff, by the way. I know a teenage boy that I basically help, or I kind of talk to or mentor a little bit. He doesn't learn about history, at least the way it used to be taught. No, he gets the liberal agenda version of history, the one that is heavy agenda, gay, teaching you, transgender, all that stuff, that teaches you socialism, that teaches you everything that is not Christian, that teaches you having a guy dressed up as a woman read storybooks to the kids is perfectly okay. That stuff. The Antichrist system. I'm not saying Republicans are better, but I don't see them sending these guys out. I understand, and I don't agree with the Bush family and all them, and all the like McCain and all these different people that are sold out to the devil anyway. But I'm just saying that they're not sending out transgender people to teach you. I don't think that they're helping anybody because let's see, abortion's still happening, and they haven't stopped it yet. So I don't think that they're exactly doing anything beneficial towards Christians either. And I don't exactly believe that George Bush was a Christian anyway. So, a lot of these people, they say they're Christian when they're running for office, and it turns out that, their fruits are not Christian at all. But then, the rest of the world, like atheists, tend to think, oh, hey, look at what those Christians are doing. And then all Christians get a bad name because of, well, George Bush was quote-unquote a Christian. Or Trump is quote-unquote a Christian. Yeah, I said it. Trump is quote-unquote a Christian. I don't really believe that he's a completely true Christian. And I don't believe he's a savior of our nation either. So just to let everyone know, I'm not on the bandwagon for calling Trump my savior. I just disagree with calling the man a racist and a Nazi and all these things when he's technically not doing anything like that, but Hillary has been. So I'm sorry if that offends you, but that's the truth. Hillary sold uranium, the Clintons, to Russia. But Trump had help from Russia getting the election won. Really? Come on. Anyway, getting back to the point, that guy talked about Venezuela. And so I thought it'd be convenient to have a little quick clip here talking about Venezuela and how socialism has destroyed it. I mean, completely destroyed Venezuela. So here's another little one by Prager University, but it's very informative.
Once there was a South American country with a promising future. It had a functioning democracy, a rapidly developing economy, and a growing middle class. All the important indicators, including education, healthcare, and foreign investment, were pointed in the right direction. It was far from perfect, but the mood was hopeful, and with good reason. But now all that promise is gone. The country is a failed state, a hollowed-out shell of its former self. Services like power and water are sporadic. The most basic consumer goods, from bread to toilet paper, are in chronically short supply. Crime has skyrocketed. Freedom of the press is almost non-existent. Democracy has been replaced by a virtual dictatorship. The country is, I'm sorry to say, my beloved Venezuela, a place in which my family has deep roots. I can tell you what happened to it in one word: socialism. In 1999, then candidate for president Hugo Chavez promised to lead the people of Venezuela to a socialist paradise. His theme was Esperanza y Cambio, hope and change. Venezuela is a nation of great wealth, Chavez said, but it's being stolen from its citizens by the evil capitalists and evil corporations. This wrong would be righted, he assured the voters, if they elected him. And they did, to their everlasting regret. Chavez drew inspiration from his mentor, Fidel Castro. Like his mentor, he enjoyed giving speeches that sometimes lasted as many as 7 hours. He even gave himself his own weekly television show, where he would spontaneously break into song. Here's a rule. When your nation's leader starts singing on national television, you're in trouble. Under Chavez, the government of Venezuela took over industry after industry. The government, he assured everyone, would run these businesses better than private enterprise, and the profits would be shared by the people. With great fanfare, he tore up contracts with multinational oil and gas companies and demanded that they pay much higher royalties. When they refused, he told them to leave. They did. His image was burnished by Hollywood celebrities who flocked to see the great work he was doing, taking money from the rich and giving it to the poor. Progressive politicians from the U.S. and Europe also praised him lavishly. Here's another rule. When Hollywood celebrities visit your country to praise your leader, you're in trouble. When the leader sings on national television and is praised by Hollywood celebrities, you're doomed. Socialism always works in the beginning, so people are fooled in the beginning. It's easy for governments to confiscate money, but eventually there's no more money to confiscate. In the case of Venezuela, I mean that literally. People who could get money out of the country did. Many left the country altogether. Nearly 2 million, according to Venezuelan sociologist Tomás Paez. The wealth creators continue to create wealth, but they created it somewhere else, Miami or Madrid, and other places around the world. When Chavez first ran for president in 1999, he said he would leave in 2 years if people weren't happy with him. But, like Castro, Chavez never had any intention of giving up power. He died in office in 2013, replaced by his vice president, Nicolás Maduro. Maduro is Chavez without the charisma or the voice. The country is now a pariah, shunned by the world and isolated. It's so bad that many international airlines refuse to fly there. People stand in lines for hours just to get food. Sometimes they walk away empty-handed. A recent survey found that 75% of Venezuelan adults lost weight in 2016, an average of 19 pounds. This national weight loss program is known cynically as the Maduro diet. Still, Maduro holds on to power. Opposition leaders and journalists who report the truth are jailed. Venezuela is a cautionary tale. Once a country goes down a socialist path, there's no easy way back. And the longer a country stays socialist, the harder it is to reform it. Venezuela has been socialist for 2 decades. If you don't think it can happen here, whether here is the United States or Europe or anywhere else, you're fooling yourself. When people get used to depending on the government, no matter how poor they remain, that dependency is hard to break. That's why you should never buy the socialist lie. Socialism is a drug. And like a drug, it feels great at first, but eventually it will ruin your country, just like it ruined Venezuela. I'm Debbie D'Souza for Prager University.
So, socialism literally is all of the things that the Liberal Party seems to be longing for, from what I understand and know. Gun control. They're doing all the things that Adolf Hitler would have wanted. Socialism just never ends. It's always the same set rules, and they just come in, and whenever a society is not educated, like our society has become, I mean, we're sitting around, I mean, we're so entitled, we're so, everything, and then now we have these Antifa people who literally want, their way. They think they're fighting tyranny, but they're really on the actual side of the Nazi party in a sense. Just by the way, they think that Trump is the Nazi, but really they're helping the Nazi. If Hillary Clinton was the president, they would be in support of her. And then all the media and all the news and all the things, Hollywood and everything, just like in Venezuela, they're all in support of socialism for the most part. I'm sure there's some Hollywood people that aren't, but for the most part, they just keep stomping their feet saying, I hate Trump, I hate Trump. You got Eminem out there, well, kind of rapping. It was the worst rap I ever seen in my life. But, I mean, literally calling Trump orange. Oh, my God. You can't come up with anything more offensive than orange, really? So anyway, it's just, these people are out there and they're just ridiculous. Johnny Depp talking about these people threatening the death of Trump. Nobody should threaten the death of anybody. If these people actually believed in the Bible or the 10 Commandments, all of the things that they are saying about Trump or anybody in general, the violence that they want to inflict, all this stuff, if they were actually Christians, none of this should be happening. But Christians are called the bad guy. Christians are radical. Christians are crazy. Thou shalt not kill is a crazy thing to say. Really? Really? Thou shalt not be covetous of your neighbor's property, or all these things. That's a bad thing? Oh, you should want to steal, or you should want somebody's stuff all the time? I mean, hip-hop music, that's all, they make money off of just that alone, of covetousness. I mean, covetousness, where they, women are a thing to them. They can, just use or buy cars, vehicles, houses, money, drinking, getting drunk, all that. I mean, that's hip hop music, really. It's just, that sums up hip hop, sadly. And I say that because that traps a lot of people's minds, because they get into this state where they think that, they got the lifestyle of a hip hop artist, or they got a studio like a hip hop. You know what? You're basically living literally in a way that goes straight up against the commandments of God. So talking about the commandments of God, because I think that that's a good system that we should try to get back to instead of going away from. Instead of putting up demon statues in public places, the Ten Commandments at least says, thou shalt not kill, all the right things. Yeah, there's many things on there. I'm just saying, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and love God above all. That's what Jesus said. And that is the sum of all of the Ten Commandments right there. Because if you loved your neighbor, you wouldn't want to kill him. You wouldn't want to be racist. All these different things. If you actually loved your neighbor, these things wouldn't be happening. So here's a great little segment that says a lot about the Ten Commandments and why it's a good thing for everybody.
No document in world history so changed the world for the better as did the Ten Commandments. Western civilization, the civilization that developed universal human rights, created women's equality, ended slavery, created parliamentary democracy, among other unique achievements, would not have developed without them. As you will see when each of the Ten Commandments is explained, these commandments are as relevant today as when they were given over 3,000 years ago. In fact, they're so relevant that the Ten Commandments are all that is necessary to make a good world, a world free of tyranny and cruelty. Imagine for a moment a world in which there was no murder or theft. In such a world, there would be no need for armies or police or weapons. Men and women and children could walk anywhere at any time of day or night without any fear of being killed or robbed. Imagine further a world in which no one coveted what belonged to their neighbor, a world in which children honored their mother and father and the family unit thrived, a world in which people obeyed the injunction not to lie. The recipe for a good world is all there in these 10 sublime commandments. But there is a catch. The Ten Commandments are predicated on the belief that they were given by an authority higher than any man, any king, or any government. That's why the sentence preceding the Ten Commandments asserts the following: God spoke all these words. You see, if the Ten Commandments, as great as they are, were given by any human authority, then any person could say, who is this man Moses? Who is this king or queen? Who is this government to tell me how I should behave? Okay, so why is God indispensable to the Ten Commandments? Because, to put it as directly as possible, if it isn't God who declares murder wrong, murder isn't wrong. Yes, this strikes many people today as incomprehensible, even absurd. Many of you are thinking, is this guy saying you can't be a good person if you don't believe in God? Let me respond as clearly as possible. I am not saying that. Of course there are good people who don't believe in God, just as there are bad people who do. And many of you are also thinking, I believe murder is wrong. I don't need God to tell me. Now that response is only half true. I have no doubt that if you're an atheist, and you say that you believe murder is wrong, you believe murder is wrong. But forgive me, you do need God to tell you. We all need God to tell us. You see, even if you figured out murder is wrong on your own, without God and the Ten Commandments, how do you know it's wrong? Not believe it's wrong, I mean know it's wrong. The fact is, you can't. Because without God, right and wrong are just personal beliefs, personal opinions. I think shoplifting is okay, you don't. Unless there is a God, all morality is just opinion and belief. And virtually every atheist philosopher has acknowledged this. Another problem with the view that you don't need God to believe that murder is wrong is a lot of people haven't shared your view. And you don't have to go back very far in history to prove this. In the 20th century, millions of people in communist societies and under Nazism killed about 100 million people. And that doesn't count a single soldier killed in war. So don't get too confident about people's ability to figure out right from wrong without a higher authority. It's all too easy to be swayed by a government or a demagogue or an ideology, or to rationalize that the wrong you're doing isn't really wrong. And even if you do figure out what is right and wrong, God is still necessary. People who know the difference between right and wrong do the wrong thing all the time. You know why? Because they can. They can because they think no one is watching. But if you recognize that God is the source of moral law, you believe that He is always watching. So even if you're an atheist, you would want people to live by the moral laws of the Ten Commandments. And even an atheist has to admit that the more people who believe God gave them, and therefore they are not just opinion, the better the world would be. In 3,000 years, no one has ever come up with a better system than the God-based Ten Commandments for making a better world, and no one ever will. I'm Dennis Prager.
So that's a very, very good analogy or segment or clip or whatever it is that really sums up why we really need the Ten Commandments and why we need God. And I think that was a very intelligent look at the whole aspect of even atheists, why we still need God, And a lot of these people who are marching in the streets and throwing a fit and saying that they hate Trump and everything's all about Trump mainly because he's a scapegoat. That's really what's going on here. Is they're feeling like they've been wronged in some way, somehow, and everybody has a different, thing that they're upset about because the media is telling us what we should be upset about and what we shouldn't be upset about and whose side we're supposed to be on and whose side we're supposed to be, whatever. Basically, we're being played, and so many people are just biting on the hook that the devil is throwing at us. And because people don't know the Bible or know the Ten Commandments or don't actually believe in God or don't actually believe in the things that are good, they tend to just go by their own man-centered way and their own wisdom, and they basically are ignorant or willfully ignorant even because they just let the world just kind of fling them whichever way whatever way it needs them to go, And all these people, I'm not saying all of them are even real because George Soros does fund a lot of people being bussed into events. And it doesn't surprise me if he doesn't. It wouldn't surprise me if he's funding the KKK showing up at these things, the Black Lives Matter, whoever shows up, and whatever conflict you see, there probably should be a little bit of analysis done to find out who really started it or how it really started. Because Antifa, they think they're fighting fascism with Trump, like I said before, but they're really serving the best will of the New World Order and the anti-Christ agenda, basically. And these people, if you have to cover your face and in order to protest or to stand against somebody, you might be doing something that's shady, If you have to cover your face, your chances are you're not doing something godly. I mean, that goes for ISIS, that goes for Antifa, that goes for anybody. If you have to cover your face to go rob the liquor store, obviously you're covering your face because you don't want to be seen. And, you know, their fascist attitude, or they think they're fighting fascism, but they're really helping to bring in a new tyranny. And these people, it scares me when these people show up with these masks and all that, not because of the masks, because I'm remembering, you know, the Nazi syndrome, you know, the whole thing, how the Nazis began, the brown shirts and all that, and, you know, the back and forth stuff that was going on back then, and these people were basically thugs. And that's what these people are doing. They're trying to scare people and bully you into their way of life, you know, their way of thinking. And that's exactly what the brown shirts did with the Nazis, okay? They're bullying people. They became the police, you know, the militant police, the police state back then. Well, what happens if the liberals get back in power, which they probably will, and when they do, if they end up making a bigger government, which socialism calls for, and having more police or more of a, because they'll need more police because they want to take your guns, so obviously we need police to protect us, so then it'll be just like Nazi Germany. Except for now, they have a spy grid that listens to everything and spies on everyone. You know, Satan the accuser accuses the brethren both day and night. And Satan on earth would use the spy grid to do the same. I can't say that enough, okay? That's something I believe in, and that's going to be used against us in the future. The spy grid system is going to be Satan's system on earth to judge every single one of us so he can copy God, so he can feel as if he is God. And that's what the Antichrist wants. So we need to get back to the 10 Commandments if that's possible. We don't know how much longer we have on the earth. We might have 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, 2 weeks. I don't know. We just need to try to get back to a more moral and good system. And the 10 Commandments is the best way, living the way Jesus said, loving God above all and loving your neighbor as you love yourself. And that's the sum of it all. And that's pretty much everything that I pretty much had to say on this episode, I think. I'll try to do another one fairly soon because I have another idea for another show. But I just figured I'd do a show on socialism because it's really becoming a big deal with Bernie Sanders and all these other people stomping their feet and trying to bring in this system. So that's pretty much all I have. So thank you for listening.
If you like this show, you can also find us under Leo Rutledge on YouTube. That's all capital letters, Leo Rutledge on YouTube. Shows like this in audio will be up on the YouTube channel, as well as video shows where I talk about other stuff as well. So check out Fringianity on YouTube under Leo Rutledge. Also, please check out the Fringianity Underground podcast Facebook group for show posts and Fringianity YouTube show posts as well. Also check out the Bible Underground. The Bible Underground is a electronic truther Christian / rock band music project that I'm working on. I'd really like your support. So if you enjoy my show, please support my music. I'm on Amazon, iTunes, wherever you download your music. And there's also a Facebook page and a YouTube channel devoted to the Bible Underground. So please check them out. So if you've listened through all of that, I want to say thank you for putting up with me. And thank you for listening to the show. And thank you for showing your support. God bless.